Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is a little bit personal, I guess. I have been getting like more and more comments and questions from you guys kind of around body image and like how is it that I am where I am now when you were doing your competitions. And I also recently kind of opened up potentially a can of worms and talked a little bit about my struggles with my eating disorder when I was really young. And I haven't really sat down and talked to you guys about it. I don't think that I was truly comfortable, to be honest. It's been really traumatic, to say the least. And I think kind of only now, just in the last 6 months, kind of coming out of that show mentality, that I have found myself wanting to express like how that has felt for me. For anybody that is currently struggling with any like disordered thoughts around food, or for anyone that has struggled with an eating disorder, whether it is anorexia, bulimia, or binge eating disorder, that there is light at the end of the tunnel and that you do not have to live with this forever. I want to talk to you about some of my experiences, I guess, growing up and like how I think I even got to that place. It's interesting, like our past lives don't get to dictate what happens moving forwards, but that also has to become like a decision that you make for yourself. And then that means that you have to be accepting of certain things. And then that also means you have to be willing to work on changing the outcome. And I think so many people kind of get stuck just in that mindset of like, not victim mentality, but like they're fearful of change, or they don't even know how to make that change. Like they don't know where to start. Like, what are my resources? I don't know what to do. So let's go back a few years. So I think if I look at how I was raised, like I grew up, you guys have probably heard this story many times, but like we were really active. We did a lot of sports. We did basketball, we did athletics, we did swimming, we did rowing, and like this was all outside of school. It wasn't just school stuff. It was kind of external to that. And we also did a lot of like extracurricular stuff too. Like I learned piano for 7 or 8 years. I did singing, I did music. Like there was a lot of areas in my life that like we were kind of just thrown into. And I think like I got a lot of praise growing up for those successes. So I think part of my motivation for why I am so driven, like as I became an adult, to be successful was because that was kind of the only way that I felt I ever got any form of like support from my family. Now, that's not me having a dig at my parents or how they raised us. Like they just, like our parents, they just do what they know. And it came from a place of love. It's just that we weren't like a really emotional, touchy-feely family. Like we didn't really, like I wasn't taught how to communicate or share my emotions. It was kind of like no one ever said anything until something was said, and it was like yelling, arguing, like, really heated, or no one shared anything at all. I don't think I really ever had that unconditional feeling of love from my parents. It was like I only ever felt like I was worthy if I was achieving something, whether it's academics at school or like leadership stuff outside of school, like talent shows, or like if I was successful in like the sports that I was doing, like, or dancing, like we did tap, jazz, ballet, singing, dancing, like all that kind of stuff. It was like I would be praised for those types of things. So I think that's kind of like what got me to the place of like really wanting to excel, but also I think that kind of created a bit of this false reality that everything really needed to be perfect for something to be like successful. And I also think just because of the types of things that we did, particularly the dancing stuff, it was always related back to like not only your performance and how well you did, But it was also like a lot of beauty. Like, you know, you had hair and makeup. Anyone that's done like any kind of performing arts like will know, like there's a lot of focus about like your appearance. And same even with like singing in bands and everything. Like before you went out on stage, like there was always hair and makeup, and it was like you've got to look a certain way. And I think that was kind of the crux of who I was. It was like, you know, even though I have this academic ability, and I think I did really well at school. Like I was a straight A student when I was growing up, like a little bit of a nerd, but I was also really sporty. So, but everything kind of, it always came back to like, I felt like I was fixed on how I looked. Like if we went out to go for dinner or see friends as kids, I just had to look a certain way. There is kind of that aspect, I think, of why, you know, we tend to get a little bit caught up on our body image and, you know, feeling the pressure to look a certain way. It's probably from us, but also like there's a lot of pressure, I think, from a society standpoint to be like slim. I don't know, like it probably extends way back into like, I don't know, thousands of years. I'm sure there is some kind of evidence from back then that, you know, showed that we like placed this, you know, someone up on a pedestal that had a slim body, or if it was a male, like a muscular body. Like I think the first bodybuilding show was 1901. They now have a cup, you know, based on that particular gentleman. This will all tie in together, I promise. So I went off to college, or first year of university, as we call it back home. And I originally wanted to do medicine. But where I was looking at applying was like just 2 hours from my house, and it was in Tasmania. And nothing against Tassie, like it's the most beautiful place ever. I kind of felt like I didn't want to feel stuck there anymore. I just wanted to escape and feel like that was me leaving was the only opportunity that I had to do bigger and better things. So the schools that I applied for nutrition were all over the mainland, so it was kind of away from home. And like I had quite a toxic relationship with my mom about appearances. I think she really worried, and I mean, again, it's all from a place of love. Like I love my mom, but we had quite a difficult time, like understanding each other, because she didn't want me to stand out at all. It was like, you just need to blend in. I don't want people looking at you for the wrong reasons. And that probably stems from past childhood trauma in her life. Like, okay, well, I don't want her to experience what I experienced, so therefore, like, I'm going to make sure that she doesn't, you know, draw the wrong crowd or anything like that. So I think as a young girl, like, you're curious about like experimenting with makeup and your clothing and just forming like your own identity. Like I felt like I had so many like identities with like sport and academics, and like I was like, I don't know what I am. Like I have no idea who I am. And it was like I just wanted to kind of like tangle with these different ideas, and it just wasn't accepted from my family. And in fact, like there was a lot of troubled years in my like childhood, from like grade 7 through to grade 12. I actually suffered from depression quite a bit. I think I felt really restricted in what I could and couldn't do. Like I was being controlled by somebody else. And I get it. Like as a parent, it would be such a difficult like line to run, where you want to be friends with your kids at that age, but also you've got to be the disciplinary. My mom was the only disciplinary. My dad was really busy. He was a workaholic. That's where I get it from. So like she kind of had all these hats to kind of fill, but also like that would be a really hard gig. So yeah, there was a lot of conflict, and it was very toxic. And I remember just wanting to not be present. And I think twice I had attempted my own life. I was very miserable, very sad, really lonely. I didn't feel like I had any worth anymore. It was like I don't know. It was just I can't even put myself back in that mindset then. All I know is it was awful. I can't recall the number of hours like sitting in my room after school just crying and crying. Didn't think I would cry doing this. Anyway, so it was really, really hard growing up. because of just, I don't think I knew who I was. It was crazy. So I did start working with a therapist, but not regularly for that. But it was more about like, it wasn't about the food so much then. And I'm going to insert where I started to have like these difficulties, I think, with my body image and purging and anorexia, because it all ties into this. I remember getting like a little bit of counseling, but it was more like how to have a better relationship with my mom, and basically not like, it was more coping with the depression, which was, I guess, the higher risk at that point because I had attempted to take my life. I think during that time, because I felt like I had no control, I was so out of control. I felt like I couldn't do anything. I couldn't be me. Didn't have an identity. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted to do. It was like the only thing I had control of at that time was my body. At that point, that's when I had started to, I guess, show signs of having anorexia. So that was pretty short-lived, to be honest. I think because I was doing so much training and exercise and was competing like for the TIS, which is the Tasmanian Institute of Sport, and working at a pretty high level even as a young like 15-year-old, I was doing so much activity that honestly I found it really hard to, like, I was failing at being an anorexic. That's how I felt. I was like, I can't even control this. And that was just like, oh my God, I can't do anything. But I was so active, like I needed energy and fuel. So I then kind of moved out of, like, I did get down to a very like dangerously low body weight for about 6 months. And then it kind of led to, well, I can't control like not eating anything. And because of that restrictive behavior, like now knowing about like how our bodies operate, like the functions of the hormones, and restriction is going to eventually lead to binging or eating in a surplus. So that was kind of where that all started to come in. It was like I was still trying to train, I was trying to restrict, and then I would restrict to a point where I couldn't anymore, and then I would like binge. And then I had so many rules around food at that time. I remember it was just like, it started off really broad, and then the more I read and learned about what was in things, it became like this awful numbers game. And I would try to, it just became like, what is the lowest? Like I had this little, it was like a Calorie King book, God, from like 2010 or 8 even. And it just had the numbers of everything. And it got to the point where I only allowed or permit certain foods that were like under 100 calories, like based on the serving size. And I remember having a little journal and making tallies of like the numbers. And if I went over, like it was one food that I had deemed bad, like a cookie. And it was like, I remember looking back at some of these journals and I had red scribble like bad, like it was just looked like a furious like mess on the page because I was so upset that I had eaten outside of these, rules. That cycle kind of continued for quite a while. And I think truly that was during my first and second year of college. And I, being someone that was really studious, like this really interfered with my studies and my grades at this point. I was in hospital for probably just over a month during my college, or year 11 or 12, I think it was. And just goes to show, I can't remember, like trauma causes you to have poor memory. So here's me trying to recall things. My memory is terrible, and it's because of the traumatic experiences that I've had. It's like I can't tap into certain things. It's very interesting how that works. But my grades suffered as a result during that time. And yeah, it was really hard, but that led me into wanting to know more about food, because that was the only thing that I had control over at that point. It was like, I can't do anything, that is deemed inappropriate by my mom, who was just trying to, stop me from being a teenager. And I guess I'll have that experience one day too. But yeah, it was like, okay, well now I'm definitely moving away, because I couldn't live in that environment anymore because I felt so restricted. So moving away was honestly the thing that I needed. Like I needed to be able to create myself and learn who I was. But it was pursuing the food stuff. So that's how and I think there are probably a lot of dietitians or people in the nutrition space that have ended up in that role where they are now because of something similar like this. It's like you have this fixation on food. So yeah, I went away, moved to Melbourne to do my undergraduate degree in food science and nutrition, and it kind of got a little bit better for a while insofar as I was no longer purging or bulimic. And part of that was because I think I just really had to focus my efforts on my studies. Like, I really wanted to do well, and I'd moved away, and I did still want my parents to be proud of me. Like, you know, they're sending their daughter off, they're spending money for this to happen, and I didn't want to let them down. Like, that's, you know, that's how I got praised. So that was still really a big part of me, even though I had all this toxicity around our relationship. But I still, like, deep down, I wanted to make sure that I did well. So it turned into like compensatory mechanisms. But this time it kind of was exercise. Anytime I felt like I had done poorly with my nutrition, or I could start to see my body shape changing, I couldn't just accept that. I had to compensate by doing something. So I remember like just having a really miserable time, like for so long, because I felt like I didn't have any more time to give to activity because I felt like I was always compensating. It was like nothing was ever enough. I would do like multiple 5K runs, like one in the morning. I'd have school, I'd go work, and then I'd have to feel like I'd have to do another one because I ate 2 fries like at my job. I used to do many jobs at school that were kind of in the restaurateur kind of industry. In food, interestingly. That period, and even kind of like beyond, outside of my schooling, like this eating disorder like truly ruined my life. I felt like it meant that I didn't really form like really good relationships, and it wasn't that like I'm not like a person that like cared about like what else was going along or going on outside my life. It was just that an eating disorder consumes you. It takes over everything, like so many things. Like, it doesn't leave any room for anything else. And it kind of, it means to me, certainly how I've kind of identified it, it meant that I couldn't be compassionate or loving to other people because I didn't have any more oomph or effort to give to anyone, because I was physically and mentally exhausted from overtraining and exercising and compensating and thinking about overeating and then purging, and then just like you'd work up these incredible, like, I don't know, it just took up all of my mental space. I didn't have anything left, and it continued to do that for many years. In fact, I think something that a lot of people probably can resonate with if you are somebody that is in the nutrition or dietetics industry, or even the health industry. I'm going to extend that to the health industry. If you've learned about like nutrition or health, or you're in the medical field, it's almost like there's this expectation that there couldn't possibly be anything wrong with you. So like, here's me at that time. Like, I had a lot of knowledge, I was learning, and I knew so much about nutrition. Yet at the same time, I was struggling to feel like I had I'm going to use the word control because I'm going to talk about that soon. But like, I felt like I was out of control. It was like I was so disordered in my way of thinking about my diet. Yet, so how could I possibly seek help about this when I'm meant to be, you know, an expert? No one's an expert when they first graduate, by the way. There's so much learning to do. So yeah, I think there was so much, I guess, fear and like this stigma about, well, you're a dietitian, you shouldn't have to get help for this. And like fear, shame, and stigma are kind of the words that I would describe this, that I didn't want to go and get help. I knew that how I was feeling was not good. I knew that it was like literally felt like it was taking over my life, but I didn't want to do anything about it because I was so ashamed that if I sought help that someone would judge me for that. I remember getting like fleeting advice like here and there throughout my like degree. So I started at 17, finished at 22, I think it was. Again, numbers and those kinds of things are not good for me. But anyway, I finished, I think 2013. And then that stuck with me for quite a few years. So kind of during that time, I had a little bit of a break from the nutrition space. I actually met my first, I guess, long-term boyfriend, and he was in like the housing industry. And that was kind of a nice change for me. I kind of finished my degree, didn't go straight into anything. I took a year off, and I guess we call that a gap year in Australia. A lot of people take gap years to work out what they're going to do. Do they want to go back and pursue more studies, honours, PhD, or do they want to go and do more education? Like, we're big on continuing education. So yeah, I took a year off before I kind of commit to a long-term job. And I just found myself in the housing industry, and that was really good, I think, for me, because it helped me move away from like a lot of the body image stuff and wanting to, like, I don't know, seek out those types of behaviors. But it never really went away. And in fact, something that I've been able to identify with, and I know that you guys will relate to this, is that anytime there is like a stressor in life, I would always end up turning back to the food. So as you can say, it's never about the food. It's about like the stress and the anxiety. Like, these things are always going to pop up in our lives, whether it is a small stress, small anxiety, or something really huge and massively traumatic. But that's how I knew to cope. From there, like, I still never got help. I never got help. And I was too stubborn and too proud to ask. Like, I didn't really want to talk to anyone about it. I felt like that would be me failing, and that was the worst thing in the world, like not doing well. Like, think about my childhood. Like, everything was, you get praise if you do well. If you don't do well, well then, you know. So yeah, that went on for years, and I truly, like, through that, it's kind of like a blurry mess in my life, where I just felt like I was never really present. I felt like there was always fixation on how I looked, even though I had all these other, like, I would say, talents, like, that could make you a successful person. Like, to me, somehow it just came back to like me being able to control my body. Part of me, like, I'm so grateful for learning about nutrition and dietetics, and now having like a broader understanding about like the science, because that helped me navigate my way to flexible dieting. And flexible dieting then is one of the things I think that like saved my life. There was a point I remember where I had a lot of stresses, and I was probably purging 3 times a day, every day. And that would have gone on for months and months and months. And then there might be a period of not doing that because I had something going on that was like enough of a distraction to get me out of those behaviors. But it was really severe, and it was always related to stress. I need to go somewhere with this. I promise I'm getting there. After that, I kind of landed myself in the bodybuilding community, and it's probably not a good thing that happened, to be honest. But I think I also knew, like, I had enough knowledge about the like science behind it, and that, hey, like, I could actually control every bit of this if I want to, because I know exactly how this works. There's still a lot of things that we're still learning, of course. I'm not saying I know everything, and it's not to say that there are going to be so many discoveries in the near future. But like, for what was known at the time, like, I felt like I had a pretty good handle on how I could navigate all of this. And that's what I did. Like, you've witnessed this. If you followed my journey since my competition started in 2015, you will have seen me navigate through the ability to control and manipulate my weight. I can get down to a really lean body composition. I'm a hard worker. I love training. It's never been an issue. But that never really dealt with the real issues. And part of that, I think, was just the body, like moving, like not feeling like I have to have control of everything, and that I have to use my body as a whipping post, and that is a tool for me to use and abuse when I feel stressed. So I think over the last 2 years, I've done competitions a lot more. Like I've had so much more thoughts about the psychological aspect, and you've seen me and witnessed me struggling at the difficult end of contest prep. And I've kind of talked to you about how the reality of those shows. So I feel like I've kind of achieved what I wanted to be able to achieve when it comes to body composition stuff. Like I know how to do it, but now it's like my thoughts are kind of moving towards like wanting to have or to find peace with that whole relationship, because it feels like 10, 15 years of trauma, like from the psychological side, and I'm done with that. And the last 12 months has really been challenging for me, but I also am really grateful for having met Lane. But like when we met, the circumstances are super challenging. He lived in America, I lived in Australia, and having like distance between somebody that is meant to be like your supporter and your number one fan, that actually led to like another spiraling out of control, like episodes of binge eating, and like this eating disorder really like reared up because I felt like nothing in my life I had a handle of or I had a grip on. It was like, I've got to literally change my entire life. I'm trying to make a relationship work from like another country. And it was incredibly challenging. And it must have been 2016, I had a nervous breakdown and I had to admit myself to like an in-care patient system for a week. And then ongoing follow-up therapy, because I had like a nervous breakdown with my business and everything that was going on around me. Like I had so much anxiety, I couldn't even open my laptop to like read emails. And at this point, like I've got full clients, I work with people every single day, and it was just like, I don't know how to do this anymore. Like I felt broken. I feel like I've done a full circle, and that I wanted to share this with you because I know so many of you are probably traveling somewhere along that road, wherever it is. I think the most important thing that I would ever say for you is to get expert help. Now, it can be expensive, but if that is important to you, if you're able to identify that this is just not the way that you want to be, or if you don't want to feel like this forever, if you feel like you're constantly thinking about food or your body, or like having to compensate, or that you have any, like, there are probably 3 things. I wrote these in my phone. I've got to look these up because it is really important. If any of these variables are affected by for you daily, then you probably need to speak to somebody. So they are work, play, and love. If any of those things you find is affected because of your fixation on your body image or your fixation on food, then it's probably time to get some help, and that's okay. Like there should be no shame in that. I wish that someone had have told me that when I was younger, because I probably could have saved 5 years, maybe more, of my life from the struggles that I went through. So yes, it can be expensive, but there's so many tools and resources online that can help you in that space and within that community of people that are accepting, that understand how you're feeling, that can at least like get you moving in that direction. And I think save the money for it. Like make that your priority. Like if you want to control something, control your finances and make up the money so that you can afford professional help, because it will make such a difference just having somebody to talk to, and that can help you with it. So yeah, I think I've kind of come out of the competition industry, I guess, bodybuilding, bikini, whatever you want to call it. I have an appreciation for all of that. Like, I know what it takes to get there. I love the fact that I have the tools and the resources to be able to do it in a way that is safer, I guess, thinking about like the physiological changes that happen when we can diet. Like I love knowing how to do that like effectively, but that doesn't mean that it's okay for people, and it doesn't mean that it's going to be easy if you are somebody that is struggling with an eating disorder, but not everyone does. So I think there's a lot of arguments at the moment about, well then why should anyone want to diet if this is the kind of thing that can happen? Or why should anyone have the desire to get on stage? Well, not everyone has an eating disorder either. So like, I think for the way that I practice and the people that I work with, like it's really important for me to kind of look at their history and kind of talk through some of these issues and decide like, is this truly something that you want to do? Or is there like, what's the agenda? What's the root cause or the desire for wanting to do this? Because there are other ways of feeling better. And that can be as little as like changing your mindset and changing the psychological opinion that you have versus the need for having to make a physical change to your body, because that won't necessarily bring you the happiness that you think it will. But you can always work on your mindset and change how you feel about yourself in your current body too. So I'm kind of moving into that space, having had all those experiences. And that doesn't mean that I'm against dieting. Like there's a huge anti-diet community out there. I'm still all for it if it leads to more positive than it does negative. So like thinking about health outcomes and, risk reduction of disease and morbidity, like that is why I do what I want to do. I want people to truly be happy in themselves. And if someone isn't struggling with those kind of negative psychological challenges, and I can help someone with the physical stuff get to the goal because I just didn't have the tools to get there, then that's so cool. But I also want to make sure that people are doing it for the right reasons and that there isn't anything that's driving them to feel the need to do that. Like there was for me, it was a sense of control, and when I was stressed, it was a way for me to manage that stress and anxiety, and it was causing so much psychological pain. So I'm moving into that space personally, but it doesn't mean that I don't still work with people on like both ends. And that this space here for me is still so new, like navigating like the acceptance stuff, like, not having the desire to be stage lean. Like that is so hard. I cannot tell you how hard it is. Like I just said in my last update video, I was having some like inner thoughts about like feeling self-conscious going hanging out with one of my best friends who's just finished competing, and I'm in the current body. And like, so it doesn't mean that I don't still struggle with it, but I think as long as you're like progressing forwards, then like I'm happy with that. I like that I'm still having like little successes every day that help me move in that direction. And it might not be some huge thing that I'm ticking off like, oh, I don't struggle anymore. I can have peanut butter and I don't want to eat the whole tub. Like, no, like the other day, like I have been really trying to make sure that I allow and give myself permission to eat things that I really want to eat, because that hasn't been how I've thought for like 15 years. It's like, I know what's in it. I better not eat it because it's going to it's going to do this or have this outcome on my body. So now it's like, okay, I'm going to give myself permission to do this. But then why am I so wanting to still eat the whole jar like of peanut butter? Or why do I still want to eat the whole tub of ice cream? Like it's been a week. Like why don't I feel any more comfortable with this item? But like if something has manifested in your life for so many years, like it did mine, like I am kidding myself if I'm going to think that that's going to change in a week or a month or maybe like years. It may still take me years to kind of get past some of those like thoughts that I used to have. But every day there's something that I can go like, or I can set myself a task to be like, okay, well, you didn't do so well yesterday, but today, all right, let's try this. Like I can always do a little bit better every day. So yeah, I feel like I probably forgot a lot of things, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight, I guess, into my history and the struggles with an eating disorder and like excessive training and feeling the need to like control my life in some way as a manifestation by controlling my body. I just want you to know that if you are in this cycle at the moment, or that you've struggled with any of these things or are currently struggling with it, that it doesn't have to be like this forever. But it's got to start with you wanting to change. And that probably means getting some expert help. And it probably means moving into a place of acceptance. If you guys have any questions about this, please comment below. I would love to hear your stories if there are things that you guys are struggling with. Keep in mind, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not somebody that does counseling. I can only talk anecdotally from the people that I've worked with and the stories that I hear from my own clients and from my own experiences. But it might be the first step that you take to getting someone that is qualified to do that and to help you more. Please ask questions. I hope that you've enjoyed kind of listening to this, and yeah, I guess I will see you next time.